You ever sit at a baseball game, hear the national anthem play, and glance around to see half the crowd scrolling through Instagram like it's just background noise? Yeah? That's the quiet tremor that tells you something is off, something foundational. Like we forgot where we came from, like we're losing the thread. Welcome back to Full Spectrum Frontiers. I'm your host, Bennett Tanton, Marine Corps recon vet, Army infantryman, solutions engineer, proud American, and probably one of the last guys in your feed talking about what conflict, culture, and courage actually look like in the real world. No fluff, no politics as usual, no conspiracy soup. Just straight talk about national security and the full spectrum of conflict that's quietly shaping the future you and I are living into. Today's episode, it's one I've wanted to tackle for a while, and to be honest, it's personal. Veterans, values, and the vanishing warrior class. Why fewer Americans are stepping up to serve, and why that should absolutely chill you to the bone. This isn't about glorifying war or waving flags just to feel patriotic. This is about what happens to a nation when the people willing to defend it, the people who believe in something bigger than themselves, start to disappear. When the warrior spirit fades, so does the backbone of the republic. We'll talk about how we got here, how the draft ended, how the volunteer force became a family business, and how generational service is now circling the drain. We'll get into the cultural crisis, why kids are no longer drawn to service, and what it says about who we're becoming. And finally, we'll explore the geopolitical risk of a nation losing its warriors, not just physically, but spiritually. Because here's the truth. A country full of comfort seekers doesn't stand a chance when the wolves come knocking. Not just abroad, but here, inside the walls. If we don't rebuild that warrior pipeline, mentally, morally, and institutionally, we're not just losing soldiers, we're losing soul. So if you've ever thought about it, or if you just give a damn about what happens to this country, lean in. And hey, before we jump into this episode, do me a quick solid. If this show brings you value, insight, or even just makes you think a little harder about the world we live in, please like, share, and review Full Spectrum Frontiers. That's how we grow. That's how these conversations reach the people who need to hear them the most. All right, buckle up. Let's get into it. So let's rewind the tape for a second. There was a time in this country when military service wasn't some niche lifestyle. It was practically a rite of passage. Let me say that again. It was a rite of passage. Your grandfather fought in World War II. Your father maybe did a tour in Vietnam. Uncles, cousins, neighbors, they wore the uniform, not for clout or Instagram likes, but because that's what you did. You answered the call, not because you had to, but because deep down you knew you should. Fast forward to today, and the numbers are staggering. Less than 1% of Americans serve in the military. 1%. And here's the kicker with that. Most of those who do serve, they're not first-timers. They come from families with long histories of service. It's generational. It's legacy. A tight-knit tribe that's shrinking with every new enlistment cycle. And no, this isn't just another kids these days rant. This isn't about blaming Zoomers or whining about TikTok. This is about asking a hard question. Why is the warrior class disappearing? Let's start with the obvious. The end of the draft, which, in my opinion, wasn't a good thing. But Since 1973, the United States has been an all-volunteer force. At first, this was framed as a win for freedom and personal choice. No more conscription, no more forced service. Sounds great, right? But over time, it created a dynamic where the burden of defense and the exposure to war fell on fewer and fewer soldiers. Instead of a nation full of citizen soldiers, we got a professionalized warrior class, specialized, elite, and isolated. It's a dangerous game because when only a small sliver of a population bears the brunt of national defense, the rest have a tendency to get comfortable, disconnected, and eventually indifferent. Think about it. If you don't know someone in uniform, if you never sat at a kitchen table and waited for a deployment call to come in, if you've never folded a flag, war becomes abstract. Service becomes someone else's problem. You don't feel the weight of sacrifice. You just scroll right past it. And here's the real problem. When that disconnection becomes the norm, the pipeline of warriors starts to dry up. The sons and daughters of soldiers don't push their kids to serve because they don't know the cost, or they do know the cost, and civilians, they're not even looking in that direction anymore. It's not about numbers, it's about culture. And back in the day, warrior virtues were something to aspire to. Strength, discipline, honor, courage. Now, we're stuck in a cultural moment where self-interest is the god of the age, where struggle is something to avoid, not to embrace, where safety is a virtue and resilience is seen as toxic. You think the average 18-year-old buried in DoorDash and Discord servers is dreaming of boot camp? Hell no. They're being taught to avoid discomfort at all costs. And the military, as much as it tries to modernize, still demands sacrifice, structure, and surrender to a greater mission. That's a tough sell in a culture addicted to autonomy and soft living. Now throw in institutional trust issues. We've had 2 decades of failed wars, shifting goals, political footballs, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria. It's hard to convince someone to serve when the mission seems murky or the leadership, frankly, seems unaccountable. Young people aren't stupid. They see the mess. They question the why. And quite frankly, they're not wrong to ask that question. But questioning isn't the same as quitting. And that's the line we're crossing now. What's left are pockets of legacy families like mine, maybe like yours, who still see the flag as worth defending, who still believe in the brotherhood. But even we're asking, is it still worth it? Not because we're scared, but because we're tired of being the only ones who carry the weight. And I'll tell you this, it is not sustainable. The Department of Defense knows it too. Recruitment goals are being missed across the board. The Army fell short by 15,000 recruits in 2022. That's not a dip. That's a red flag waving in the wind, right? So where did all the warriors go? They didn't just vanish overnight. Bottom line is they were slowly chiseled away by culture, by comfort, by institutional rot. And the scary part, we didn't notice. Or maybe we just didn't care. But we should. Because when the warrior class disappears, the wolves don't go away. They just wait for the door to crack open. Let's zoom out for a second. Take a step away from uniforms, boot camps, and recruiting numbers, and let's talk values. Because this isn't just a military problem. It's a cultural crisis with national security consequences. Here's the hard truth. We are living in a values vacuum. The old virtues, duty, sacrifice, courage, perseverance, they're not being passed down like they used to. And frankly, they're being taught to not even look at those as values. And I'm not just talking about some Norman Rockwell fantasy. I'm talking about the inner code that made America resilient through wars, depressions, and existential threats. That internal compass that pointed to something bigger than self. That's broken. Today, we've traded that compass for comfort, for curated feeds, safe spaces, and dopamine on demand. We are overfed, overstimulated. I'm absolutely guilty of these, and undertested. But before you say, come on, Bennett, this is just the evolution of society, let me ask you, what exactly are we evolving into? Because from where I'm standing, we're raising a generation that's never been punched in the face, never had to push through a wall of fear, and never been expected to serve anything outside of themselves. And when no one's expected to serve, no one learns how. That's the root of this vacuum. Service has become optional, not just in the literal sense of joining the military, but in the deeper sense of giving a damn about your neighbor, your community, or your country. When everything becomes transactional, what can I get? What's in it for me? We lose muscle memory of sacrifice. Now apply this to national defense. How do we defend a nation that no longer believes in sacrifice? How do we fill the ranks with people who've been told from birth that struggle is abuse, that authority is oppression, and that all hierarchies are bad? You don't. Or worse, you fill the ranks with people who are only there for a paycheck, a bonus, a free degree. Listen, I'm not knocking the benefits. I take advantage of plenty. But when benefits become the only motivator, you've lost the soul of the force. Lawyers don't fight for contracts. They fight for conviction. We used to understand that. So where did it go? Part of the problem lies in our institutions, especially education. Our schools used to celebrate figures like Audie Murphy and Chesty Puller, or even Pat Tillman, which wasn't that long ago in the grand scheme of things. Now, that's considered problematic. We're raising kids on a steady diet of moral relativism and social guilt with little room for the heroic. The message is loud and clear. Don't be proud of your nation. Don't admire strength. Don't trust your instincts, especially if they lean towards traditional values. Don't trust those. Is it any wonder that young men are checking out? And women. Not just from service, but from society in general. We've built a culture that shames masculinity, mocks patriotism, and confuses pacifism with peace. And then we wonder why we're running out of warriors. It's not about politics. It's about formation, character formation, civic formation, moral formation. We have young people who can code an app in 5 languages, but don't know the words of the Pledge of Allegiance. We've got more influencers than infantry, and we celebrate that like it's some sort of progress. Here's the kicker. Adversity is a feature, not a flaw. Challenge builds capacity. Struggle reveals strength. Hard times, as the old saying goes, make strong men. And right now, we're in the soft times phase. And unless we reverse course, we're headed towards collapse. Now, I'm not saying we need to draft everyone tomorrow and put the country in a on a war footing. But I am saying we need to reawaken the spirit of service. We need to start teaching again, not just facts, not just values, not just about how to take a test, not just how to think, but what's worth thinking about. You want to fix recruitment? Start by rebuilding reverence for the flag, for the Constitution, for the warriors who kept this grand experiment alive for nearly 250 years. And that starts with us. Veterans, parents, mentors, teachers. We have to stop outsourcing the job of value formation to the algorithm. We have to stop pretending that this is just the new normal, because it's not normal. It's dangerous. We are not guaranteed to stay free. We are not immune to collapse. Empires fall all throughout history. Republics rot. All that it takes is a generation that no longer believes the fight is worth it. And frankly, that's where we're at. But here's the good news. And yeah, there's good news. Values can be revived. They can be taught. They can be modeled, lived. It's slower than scrolling. It doesn't go viral, but it does work. And every person who chooses the harder right over the easier wrong, every young man or woman who signs up not for what they'll get, but for what they'll give, they're punching holes in the vacuum. They're holding the line. So no, the warrior class isn't gone, but it is endangered. And if we don't step up to protect it, not with politics, but with purpose, we'll lose more than a recruitment class. We'll lose the foundation of who we are. And I don't know about you, but I'm not willing to let that happen on my watch. So let's talk about what happens when a warrior class disappears. Not in some abstract theoretical way, but in real boots on the ground, planes in the air, enemies at the gates terms, because this isn't just about honor. It's about survival. A republic without warriors isn't a republic for long. And when I say warriors, I don't just mean men and women in uniform. I mean people willing to fight for something beyond themselves. People who've internalized the idea that freedom isn't free and that you have to defend it on the battlefield, in the voting booth, in your community, and yes, sometimes even at your dinner table when tough conversations come up. Let me paint a picture. Right now, the United States military is facing its most serious manpower crisis in decades. I brought up some of the numbers earlier. But the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force have all missed their recruiting goals, some by double-digit percentages. At the same time, global threats are accelerating. China is building and modernizing its military at a breakneck pace. Russia isn't slowing down. Iran's fingers are in every proxy war from Syria to Yemen still, even after the bombings. And don't forget North Korea, still saber-rattling with nukes and cyber attacks. But while those adversaries are sharpening their spears, we're having debates about whether boot camp is too mean and if combat training should accommodate emotional safe spaces. Folks, it's combat training. You think I'm exaggerating? Look at the current discourse. Our military leaders are caught between political pressures of culture wars and the operational demands of preparing for actual wars. And here's the reality check. If we don't have enough qualified, committed individuals to fill the ranks, who fights the next war? Let's play that out. First, it's very much like Russia. All right, let's play that out. First, we outsource contractors, mercenaries, drones, AI, Sounds modern, right? Efficient? Until the bullets start flying and the system goes down. Until you realize a drone doesn't secure a village, win hearts and minds, or carry a wounded teammate out of a firefight. Human beings still matter. Boots on the ground still have to hit the dirt. Next, then, we lower standards, introduce waivers. And I'm talking about waivers for crazy things, not tattoos, relaxed requirements. We start admitting people who probably shouldn't be there. Physically, mentally, morally. That degrades the force from the inside out. You can't build an elite team on compromised foundations. And then, if the situation gets bad enough, we start whispering about the unthinkable. That would go over well in a society that sees military service as someone else's burden. Suddenly, the same generation that was never taught to value national defense is being asked to take up arms. And frankly, they're not ready. None of us want that scenario. But the truth is, we're drifting right towards it like a boat without a motor. Because we're hollowing out the republic. Not through enemy invasion, but through civic apathy. Let me put it this way. A healthy nation doesn't need a massive standing army if it has a strong warrior class. If enough people are willing to defend what they love, the enemy thinks twice. Deterrence works when it's backed by grit, by history, by bloodlines that know how to fight. But if that deterrence is a facade, if it's all tech and no teeth, all money and no men, then what we have is a hollow republic. A house with no foundation. And enemies can smell that weakness. China's not building warships. They're cultivating nationalism, pride, and military readiness in their youth, along with building warships. Russia's not just playing chess in Eastern Europe. They're embedding warfighters into their cultural DNA. Even non-state actors with cartels, terror groups, militias are all filling the warrior vacuum where governments have failed. Meanwhile, our own kids are being taught that masculinity is toxic, that patriotism is problematic, and that service is suspect. Like, I'm not here to romanticize war. I've seen it. I've lived it. I carry the scars. But I am here to remind us that peace only exists because someone is willing to stand in the breach and say, not today. And people think that's corny, but that's what stops it. So what happens when no one is standing in the breach? Well, that's the cost of a hollow republic. It loses its edge. It loses its credibility. Eventually, it loses its sovereignty. And no, this isn't fear-mongering. It's just history. Rome didn't fall in one day. It rotted slowly from the inside out. Citizens became consumers. Soldiers became mercenaries. And when the barbarians came, the heart of the republic was already gone. We're not there yet, but we're playing with the same fire. Now here's the hopeful part, because I promised you optimism, and I mean it. We can turn the ship around. We can rebuild the warrior class, not just through recruitment ads, but through cultural reformation, through education, through family, through media, through mentorship. We can restore the idea that service is honorable, that protecting others is noble, that duty isn't a dirty word. We can celebrate the soldier, not just the celebrity. We can model strength, not just signal virtue. And we can remind the next generation that freedom is fragile, and it needs defenders, not just in camo, but in character. That's what this whole show is about. Full Spectrum Frontiers isn't just about military tactics or government budgets. It's about the soul of our nation, the threads that hold it together, and the people brave enough to stitch it back up when it starts to tear. So if you've served, thank you. If you haven't, find a way to serve something. Your family, your community, your country, your calling. Because warriors come in many forms, but the mindset, that's universal. Hold the line. So here we are. The numbers are sobering. The pipeline is drying up. The wolves are watching. And the spirit of the Republic, well, it's hanging by a thread that used to be a rope. But if you listen this far, I know something about you. You care. Maybe you're a veteran like me, watching the next generation drift further from the fire. Maybe you're a civilian who gets that national security isn't just a Pentagon thing. It's a people thing. Maybe you're a parent, a teacher, a mentor, and you're asking, how do I pass this torch before it goes out? Let me leave you with this. We don't need everyone to become a soldier. We need everyone to become a citizen again. A real one, a real citizen. One that understands that freedom is expensive, that values matter, and that peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's the result of courage. It's the result of readiness. It's the result of a warrior class that doesn't shrink back when the world gets ugly. We have to bring that back. We have to, through stories, through service, through showing up when it would be easier to log out. America doesn't need more noise because gosh knows we have enough of it. It needs more men and women of resolve, warriors of conscience, actual conscience, people who will do the hard things quietly, not, without hashtags, because they must be done. And that's what I'm here to remind you of every week. Full Spectrum Frontiers isn't just a podcast. It's a call sign, a signal flare, a reminder that there's still ground worth holding and a future worth building. So if this episode sparked something in you, if it stirred up questions or conviction, please share it. Send it to a fellow vet. Send it to someone who's never thought about service. Post it, tag it, review it, rate it. That's how this message spreads, and it needs to. We're not done yet. Not even close. Next week, we dig into something just as important. What does modern deterrence really look like in the age of AI, cyber warfare, and proxy chaos? Trust me, it's not what you think. But until then, stand tall, stay sharp, and remember, you don't have to wear the uniform to be on the front line. Semper Fi. This is Full Spectrum Frontiers. I'm Bennett Tanton. Thanks for listening.
I will be your shield in the fiercest battle. I'll defend you from all these arrows, and the sword I wield will keep you from danger. Let me be your shield.
Yeah. It's just you, me, and the odds. We stuck together, we two peas in a pod. You dealt a bad hand, I'm there seizing the cards. We'll never be separated till we see in the gods. We've been low together, high forever. Long as we go together, we'll die whenever. Be a light, couldn't let the darkness try you ever. Truth in my word, you I lie to never. And when the world gets a little too hard, wipe your eyes, put away your sorrow. When it's war, I'll be leading the charge, and I'll be still fighting for you tomorrow. Yeah, even with a blindfold or in different time zones, could find my way to you with my eyes closed. There's nothing between us. Go to Mars and Venus, stand in front of every one of them rocks they slinging and be a shield.
Your shield in the fiercest saying it may take patience, but you're gonna make it out. I scratch my own 2 feet to pull you to safety. When the fires are burning